All right, good morning. We will get started, and we're checking in. We're good on Zoom with El Cerrito. Thank you. All right, this is a meeting of the board of the East Bay Wildfire Coalition of Governments, and I am the chair, John Joya from Contra Costa County. So we will do our roll call. I will do that. Alameda County here, Contra Costa here, City of Berkeley,
Present.
City of El Cerrito,
Present.
City of Hercules, City of Oakland, City of Pinole,
Here.
and City of Richmond.
Here.
Great. And we do have a quorum. And just to note, we do have other public agencies that attend these meetings. Let me just see if any of them are here today. UC Berkeley, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, East Bay Regional Park District, East Bay Municipal Utility District, East Bay Fire Safe Alliance, Diablo Fire Safe Council, got it. And I do see someone from PG&E here, although not on this list, but thanks for being here. All right, with that, first item is approval of minutes of the meeting of September 24th, 2025. The minutes are attached. I just always want to acknowledge Robert Rogers in my office. Staffing this takes time. So Robert, just want to acknowledge all the time and effort. So there are minutes. Any comments or questions on the minutes? If not, any public comment on the minutes? Nope. All right. So just is there a motion, a second to approve the minutes? Okay. Motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those are approved. Okay. Chair's report, very brief report. I wanted just to update emails went out to city managers. If folks need help on getting funding as representatives, please let me know. We can set up a meeting, because I did check with our Contra Costa County, which is now our fiscal agent. They have received $22,560, of which $10,000 came from the Oakland Fire Safe Council, which were funds transferred over, and $12,250 from Elizabeth Stage, which I believe was related to the Fire Safe Council's work. That comprises the $22,560. I know the fire district's processing its own dues. The auditor controller for Contra Costa County is in the process of setting up the separate account to handle revenues and expenses separate from the district's general fund, and we'll be getting reports once that's done. So that's the financial situation. Okay. Any questions? All right. Moving to our presentation, and we've been getting a series of presentations from a number of agencies, and one that's been clearly asked for and relevant is from the California Department of Insurance. And so item 4, which is a presentation from the California Department of Insurance on sustainable insurance strategies, safer from wildfire discounts, steps after non-renewal. Just a note here. And I just to note on these presentations, they are all recorded, and which is great to have. And we have, I've lost the contact, but Sharon Stone from the California Department of Insurance, who is an East Bay outreach analyst representative. So we appreciate you're here in the East Bay, and you would be the contact for us if we have issues with the department. Oh, Sharon Smith. I'm sorry, I said Stone. I was thinking of Hollywood, I think. Sharon Smith, outreach analyst. And the presentation we have on the website, or we'll have it on the website for folks. So Sharon, thank you. And just to acknowledge City of Oakland, our vice chair is here.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. This way, I'm a little loud. My name is Sharon Smith. I'm an outreach analyst. I moved recently from the San Diego area. I'm now the East Bay representative. but I wanted to talk a little bit about our implementation of the sustainable insurance strategy at the Department of Insurance, a little bit about how to assist maybe your constituents as they're calling, asking how to get insurance, what to do after a renewal, and then some ways that you can partner with us in the future and learn more about insurance options in the state. So get the next slide, please. Before I really get into what the sustainable insurance strategy is, I think it's important to kind of lay the foundation as to why, insurance companies are leaving the state. More people are having issues finding insurance. More policyholders are having to turn to the FAIR Plan. And none of this really happened overnight. It's a confluence of factors, but I think the underlying one is definitely the increasing severity and intensity of natural disasters due to climate change. That's really underlying a lot of these issues. Of course, inflationary pressures are also making it difficult to find insurance, to get affordable insurance. I like to think of it, anything that your insurance company or anything that you buy, your insurance company is also buying. So as everything is getting expensive, the cost for insurance companies are also getting expensive. Insurance companies also buy their own insurance. It's called reinsurance. Reinsurance is based off of global markets. So as global catastrophes are getting more expensive, insurance companies themselves are having to spend more on insurance. So again, everything that you're buying, an insurance company is also buying. That includes insurance. So we're seeing risk grows, and we're seeing that insurance companies are contracting to protect financial solvency and protect just overall financial stability. So because of all of these issues, the Commissioner Ricardo Lara started the Sustainable Insurance Strategy, and this addresses these really pressing issues faced by the insurance market and consumers in California. And everything I'm talking about is available in the California Sustainable Insurance Strategy handout that I have over here as well. So the kind of parts of this strategy that are meant to increase insurance access, fairness, and resilience for both the market and consumers. The first step of this is really modernizing our wildfire risk models. So this new strategy incorporates new catastrophe models that consider mitigation and hardening requirements, the things that are being invested by the legislator as well as homeowners' individual home hardening. So this is going to lead to more accurate risk pricing and offering of discounts for customers as well. So this means that accurate rates mean that Californians are going to pay more than they should for insurance. So these risk models these catastrophe models have been asked for by insurance companies for a long time, but we have a very unique insurance process in California because of Prop 103. So historically, insurance companies have had to use historical data to set rates and underwriting, which causes some issues because the climate's changing quickly. We can't just rely on this historical data. And there's a lot of investments that are being done for home hardening, for fuel mitigation, that's not being taken into account if only historical data is used. So that's really why the forward-looking wildfire risk models are being introduced and are allowed, insurance companies are allowed to use them. And so for insurance companies to be able to use these models, they have to commit to writing more coverage in high wildfire areas. So that was part of the agreement. They want to use these, they have to commit to writing more in these areas where it's becoming very, very difficult to find insurance. So we're going to be expanding the availability of insurance, having more insurance return to these high risk areas, and giving consumers more coverage options. Next slide, please. So kind of part of the sustainable insurance strategy as well is continuing to modernize the FAIR Plan. So we want to make sure that it's financially solvent. There's been a few bills introduced that have actually already been signed by the governor to continue to shore up the FAIR Plan. There is some concerns about its solvency, especially after the Palisades and Eaton fires. So there's been some legislation introduced to allow them some additional financing through catastrophe bonds to be able to continue to shore up that plan. And then again, kind of ensure commitments to write more policies in wildfire distress areas, requiring that insurance companies write more than 85% of homes and businesses in distressed areas, reducing the amount of people on the FAIR Plan, and again, increasing availability for consumers. Next slide. This is kind of a roadmap of where we are now. We introduced this sustainable insurance strategy about a year and a half ago. It's fully implemented now as of January 1st. And so the way this kind of works through our process is that anytime an insurance company wants to raise rates, they want to have discounts, anything like that, they have to go through our department for a rate review process. So the catastrophe models have already been reviewed, they've been approved. At this point, they're going through the rate review process. The insurance companies are telling us which are the models that they're using, how this is going to impact customers. And then after that, these reviews will either be approved or denied. And that's kind of where we're at in the immediate term. And then the next steps are continuing to roll out any further regulations and monitoring the market response, making sure they're actually doing what they said they're doing, writing in more high wildfire areas and increasing availability. Next slide, please. So again, this is just kind of a recap of what I said. The rate applications are currently being accepted by insurers, and CSAA, Allstate, and Mercury Insurance were the first to respond to this and are making filings, and we're expecting a lot more from other insurers. Next slide. So I also wanted to call some attention to some regulations that we have called Safer from Wildfires. So this was a 3-part framework to protect your home and business, protect immediate surroundings, and protect the whole community. Protecting the home and business is exactly as it sounds. That's, having a Class A fire rated roof, enclosed eaves, double pane windows. The protecting immediate surroundings is just the clearing of vegetation around the homes. And then protecting the whole community is the FireWise USA designation and community fire risk reduction communities. And I highlighted these because this part of this legislation was that if you have these actions, if you live in a FireWise community or fire risk reduction community, that needs to be recognized by your insurer in the form of a discount. So I can't say there's a flat discount for all of them. They do depend on the insurer, but if you have any of these are something your constituents should know that should qualify them for discounts. Next slide, please. And then I wanted to end with some of the tips for finding residential insurance. This is also a handout I have over there. So of course, there's an increase in non-renewals and understanding that insurance is getting harder to find in these areas. So in these high-risk areas. So there is a non-renewal. The very first step that a consumer should take is to contact the insurer and ask if there's any specific actions you could take to mitigate the risk and retain their coverage. I just went over the Safer from Wildfires framework. Part of this regulation was also giving consumers the right to ask for their wildfire risk score. So a lot of consumers and constituency don't know that they have the right to ask for that. So if you get a non-renewal, if you're applying for a new policy, if you're renewing the policy, those are all times that you can ask for your wildfire risk score. You can also ask for it if there's been some sort of mitigation action taken on the home. You have within 30 days to ask for a revised score. So if you've gotten non-renewed, there's no reasons why there's a non-renewal. That should be your first step. Asking what the wildfire risk score is. And then under the Safer from Wildfires regulation, you also, as a consumer, have the right to ask for an appeal of the score if you feel that it's wrong. Sometimes, you'll have somebody say, hey, they're sending me this information and they've used, old Google data or drone footage to make the determination. And sometimes it's a photo of the wrong house or an old photo that they're making these determinations on. So it's really important for consumers to understand that they have a right to appeal this score and a right to understand why their insurance company is non-renewing them. So that's a huge first step. And then the Department of Insurance is also here to help with the appeal process. We can be a liaison, and I'll make sure to have that contact information at the end where to call. But if there is an issue, if you feel the non-renewal was unfair, you do have an option to file a complaint with us. Another kind of note that an insurance company needs to give at least 75 days of a notice before they non-renew you. That's really important. It's a state law. They have to give 75 days. Sometimes they don't. And those are usually something that our department's able to overturn those decisions if not enough notice was given. And then we have lots of tools on our website, home insurance finders tools, ability to kind of compare coverages, finding agents and brokers in your neighborhood. And again, all of that information is listed there. And then kind of the last resort would be the FAIR plan, which is the kind of insurance of last resort. And that's kind of the most bare bones coverage, sometimes the most expensive, and kind of step after that would be surplus lines or unadmitted insurers. So that's something that a constituent should definitely talk to an agent about. If there aren't any insurers on the private marketplace, then it's time to look at these other options as well. Next slide. I just wanted to again highlight some legislative actions that are on the governor's desk now. I believe most of these have already been signed. The California Safe Homes Act was one that the commissioner was really supportive of, but this was giving tax-free home hardening grants for safer communities. Another one was the Business Insurance Protection Act, which expands insurance moratoriums for businesses and HOAs after a wildfire or disaster. There's usually a 2-year period if you have a total loss that your insurance company cannot cancel your coverage. That did not exist for businesses and HOAs and commercial policies. So this bill was aimed to counteract that. And there's some California Home Fire Hardening Community Commission Act, as well as the Eliminate the List Act, which the commissioner was also spearheading about after there is a loss, what your insurance company is usually going to ask for is a copy of everything that was in the home, the list, right? This is a huge burden to homeowners who have recently lost their homes. There's usually just a small percentage that they were able to claim without a list, and this bill allows them to claim at least 60% of their contents coverage, up to $300,000. So that was a huge change for survivors of wildfires that are already having to go through so much. Next slide. These are a few other ones as well. The Wildfire Public Catastrophe Model Act. I talked about how insurance companies are using their own catastrophe models. The Wildfire Public Catastrophe Model Act allows for the state to build its own catastrophe model, which will be really, this is going to take time. This isn't something that's going to, come up in a year or so. This is going to take time to develop, but it's going to be an important tool for Californians to check what their actual risk scores are with this independent tool, and then compare that to what their insurers are saying their risk is. Next slide. This is the last thing I wanted to highlight, and getting a lot of questions about AB 3074. This is the Zone Zero. You may have already heard about this, but there's multiple kind of state agencies that are working on finalizing the rules for Zone Zero, getting a lot of questions about how this pertains to insurance. And what I'll say is that today, if your insurance company wanted to enforce Zone Zero, even without any sort of rules from the Department of Forestry or CAL FIRE, they are able to, right? So even with the even though we don't have the regulations kind of set in place, I believe the deadline for them is the end of this year. That won't stop your insurance company from asking for this Zone Zero to be enacted. And once these rules are finalized, let's say they allow for, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but let's say they allow for potted plants in the area, or they allow for trees of a certain height to be in those. That might mean something for the enforcement from fire agencies, but that does not translate to your insurance company honoring what those rules of the state are. They might have far stricter rules, and they might have a larger geographic area where they're asking for Zone Zero to happen. So Zone Zero, as AB 3074 laid out, I believe it's for high risk areas and very high risk areas, but an insurance company could ask for Zone Zero to be in a moderately risk area. So again, this is something to kind of just know that this might not necessarily translate directly, that these laws might not necessarily translate directly to what insurance companies are going to ask for. Next slide. And then the last thing I want to highlight is our contact information at the Department of Insurance. I'll make sure all of you have my personal contact information for any sort of specific questions. Also get you an ombudsman contact. That's who handles our legislative kind of inquiries from constituents. But this is the general kind of hotline number. If there are any questions, any complaints that you want to file, any issues with wildfire risk scores, agents not responding, this is really the best contact to have. It's that 800-927-4357 number. That is our hotline. during business hours. We have a 2-minute response time. They will answer. Sometimes I'll call if I have a really, specific insurance question. There's some really great agents on the line that are willing to help. So that's really all I have for my presentation, but I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Really, this is very helpful. I know there'll be some questions, but just a couple quick ones. When you say insurance companies can enforce zone zero, does that mean that they can require, even without the guidelines, some
Absolutely.
type of zone zero action that they define?
Yeah.
So they would say you need to do X, Y, and Z,
Exactly.
and require that to keep your insurance.
Yes, and they already are in some cases. I have seen that happen before, that they're requesting that. Paradise, the city of Paradise is a really good example. After they've rebuilt, a lot of the homes were built to really high fire standards, some of the highest. They actually passed a bill that was, if you're rebuilding in Paradise, it has to be to IBHS standards, but still some homes were not compliant on the zone zero, so they were still unable to get insurance. So that's something that's already happening, again, absent this legislation, absent this bill happening. So again, I'm getting a lot of questions. That's why I added it there,
Yeah.
but it's important to note that yes, insurance companies, they do have their own definitions of zone zero that might not be the same as what is coming from those.
But eventually, when the state enacts whatever policies it enacts, those will apply. That's what the insurance companies are most likely going to be required to comply with, or can they come up with their own standards?
They can still come up with their own standards that can be a lot, which are usually, I will say, a lot stricter than what the state will say.
So this leads to a common question I think that we get and that I have is, we look at what can property owners do to reduce the risk they will get canceled. Their policy would not get renewed. And related to that, are more of the cancellations we're seeing based on a general geography more than what an individual is doing? Because I know a few years ago, Orinda had one of the highest percentages or numbers of cancellations by an insurance company, the city of residents in Orinda, no matter what people did to protect their home. So how do you respond to that?
That's a fantastic question. And I will say it depends on the insurance company, right? So I was talking about how all of them have different tools and models. Some of them use really, really granular data that's going to look at the home, look at exactly how it's constructed, look exactly at what it's doing. Some of them just use really coarse data like zip code. So if you live in Orinda in a certain insurance company, you apply for a policy, a certain insurance company, maybe they outright deny it. Whereas another one will look more closely about what you exactly what you've done. So it really does depend on how the insurance company is underwriting and setting rates that's going to determine that. It's hard to make these kind of hard sweeping assumptions because these insurance companies do operate quite differently depending on their size. Yeah.
Because obviously fires don't stop at property boundaries, do insurance companies look at not just what you're doing, but what your neighbors on your block are doing? I mean, I just take the example of up the hill from here, Kensington, El Cerrito, with the urban interface zone. If, let's say, along a residential street, some residents are doing things, some are not, that puts everybody at risk.
Yeah.
How does that factor into what an insurance company, their decision making?
Yeah. Back to what I had said about the Safer from Wildfires, the fire risk reduction communities and the fire wise communities, which are these like community level designations that, we're all doing or taking these steps to make our homes safer. Those types of things are recognized by insurance companies through discounts. So that's kind of a way that it's kind of talked about on a community level scale. On the other hand, we have wildfire risk models, like these forward-looking models that are being introduced that will take into account all of the hardening that is done on a home scale, on a parcel level scale, and then also the mitigation that's being done by the legislator, the fuel breaks, the clear cutting. All of those things should be incorporated into these models as well. So that's kind of how the community level mitigation is being taken into account. But that isn't something that was really taken into account before these models. So that's something that hopefully with these changes in this technology, that we'll be able to see those hardening and mitigation measures actually reflected in insurance availability.
And something you showed, you had a slide on what to do if you're if you have a non-renewal. it would be helpful, maybe you already have this, if the Department of Insurance could have some type of material on its website or handout that is, what are the steps that homeowners can take to minimize the risk of being canceled to the extent that they can take some personal action? Is there something you have out that's a resource for homeowners to
I
look
would
at?
say the closest would be the Safer from Wildfires framework that we have, where it's like all the steps that you take to mitigate your property itself. That's the only one I didn't bring today.
It's on your website.
It's on our website, yeah.
it.
So the Safer from Wildfire. So those are the steps that insurance companies have to take by law, look at for homes. But now, does that actually translate in you? It's hard to say you do these things and you're not going to get canceled by insurance, right? That's not something that I've seen works 100% of the time. It really depends on geography, depends on like the topography, depends exactly where your home is. There's a lot of factors that go into it. But the Safer from Wildfires framework, I will say, are things that the insurance company takes into account at the very least for discounts. So that's, I think, a good place to start if you have those things.
Thank you. So we'll start with questions. We'll start from this end and come down. How we do that? Okay.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. I have to confess, I cannot say the same thing about Commissioner Laura's performance. The process that insurance companies are taking is very opaque. People don't know what their modeling is involved. For example, Contra Costa and Alameda counties have a vegetation map with very high resolution.
Yeah.
Why aren't or are the insurance companies using them, have their own? Anyway, the main complaint is about lack of transparency and modeling. Is it correct or not? Is anything going to be done in this regard?
Yeah, so the catastrophe models that were approved did go through a review process by our department. So there was a level of kind of review and transparency on our end of seeing exactly what are the things that are allowed in it, what are not. There are some videos that you could see of like Verisk is one of the catastrophe modelers that we reviewed. They're explaining exactly kind of what are the things that go into it. It was a process that they had to sign because, again, a lot of this information is proprietary. Like you said, it's hard to figure out exactly what's in them. But the public was allowed to kind of look into these wildfire risk models as long as they signed a non-disclosure act. And so there were some members that were consumer groups that were looking, as well as our department, to see exactly what these models are. I will kind of caveat on the catastrophe models, because the catastrophe models, as they're being approved to be used, it's how it's going to affect rates. So that's really what our department has authority over, is to review how insurance companies are setting rates. For underwriting, it gets a little bit more murky, just because our jurisdiction as the Department of Insurance is for the rate review process, not necessarily exactly where they're writing. We don't have any authority to tell insurers they have to write in an area. The only kind of commitment that we've gotten from them is, we'll review your catastrophe models, approve them. And if we approve use of catastrophe models, then you need to write more in these high risk areas. Can't exactly tell them where to write.
Yeah, it's a compromise, but I'm not sure how much it benefits the public. The point is, if there is transparency, the public and agencies know what the important factors are, and they can focus on it, spend budget on it. But insurance companies, drop consumers most of the time without any notices, without much information. So I'm not expecting you to answer. I appreciate the presentation, but it's just feedback. I hope that the Department of Insurance works on it, and the insurance commissioner actually office. And this is very important.
Yeah.
Some transparency, some open communication, and some collaboration. I forget the name of the agency that does all the fire tests for the insurance companies. So it can become transparent, their findings and what's important and what goes into catastrophic modeling.
So we'll say the insurance companies do have to give a notice that is mandatory. It's 75 days notice before they non-renew, and they do have to tell you the reasons for non-renewal. Back to the wildfire risk score, you have the right as a policyholder to ask what that score is, ask to appeal it, ask what the kind of factors are for the cancellation. So that is something that's legally, you're right, it doesn't happen all the time, but that is something that is a consumer's legal right to ask for.
So 75 days before renewal date, they know.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. And the other thing is the role of fire breaks we heard from our county fire marshal that fire breaks count and may be incorporated into that catastrophic modeling. Do you have any update on that?
Yeah. So there are lots of kind of things written out in the sustainable insurance strategy, specifically about what these wildfire catastrophe models need to include. And part of it was the vegetation management fuel breaks. So the models that have been approved do have some sort of capacity to kind of acknowledge the community level mitigation that's being done with like fire breaks and things like that. So yeah, the models that have been approved do have that already incorporated in.
And my last question, I'm not sure how related it is, but some of the fires have started by PG&E equipment. Is there any regulation or look into that or vicinity or fire breaks on PG&E equipment?
Not anything by our Department of Insurance, just because we regulate the insurance marketplace, utilities and things are not, they're kind of related to fires, but not necessarily within our jurisdiction to be able to tell PG&E or anybody in that realm to do that kind of fire mitigation.
Okay, thank you very much.
We'll move this way on questions, Supervisor. No.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple questions. First, I heard you say a couple of really interesting things, and I wanted to get a slightly more specific answer. If a neighborhood, and if it's like a group Firewise community, just a neighborhood, is compliant with home hardening rules and Zone 0, are they guaranteed a discount from insurers? I heard you say that they.
So just by nature of being a Firewise community, they get a discount. It's not just that they're doing. Firewise has different rules on how you actually become a Firewise community. It doesn't necessarily mean you have every single thing completed on the Safer from Wildfires guide, but by nature of being a Firewise community or a fire risk reduction community, you do get a discount. That is something that insurance companies have to honor. Yes.
They have to. Okay.
Yes.
When I speak to my constituents, I just want to make sure I'm speaking correctly.
Yeah.
That's a right that they have. Thank you for clarifying that. Similarly, you mentioned, you talked about the updated models and how they're going to take into account a lot more information. And I heard you just say, the models that have been approved take into account this more holistic information. Once again, is that can you guarantee that all models that will be approved contain that, or is that just what you've approved so far?
That's what we've approved so far. So the Veris, Moody's, I'm blanking on the other one I had on the slide, but there's been 3 models that have been approved so far for use by insurance companies to be able to set rates. So those 3 models take into account that community level mitigation. There's a lot of factors that are kind of being incorporated into that. But part of that is the community level mitigation, all the investments being done by homeowners, by the legislator. Those are things that have to be taken into account for these models.
For the ones that have been approved?
For the ones that have been approved so far.
So is it safe to say that no model will be approved without that?
Correct. Yeah. The point of these models is to take into account these mitigation efforts. It's to really analyze what the risk is to the community, to these homes themselves. So there's a lot of kind of data that goes into them. And so part of that is making sure that the kind of community level mitigation is being taken into account.
Thank you. And last question, this is more general. What is the single most effective thing that this body or any one of us in our capacities at our jurisdictions can take to help with insurance loss?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a single kind of thing that's going to be like the silver bullet for insurance. And I think it's important to kind of get away from the thinking of like, we do this one thing and we're going to get insurance. I think it's a really
about 3 things.
Yeah, kind of complicated thing. But I would say education on wildfire, kind of home hardening, community level mitigation is really important. Like trying to support these Firewise communities, these fire safe councils that are doing amazing work on, getting homes compliant to these home hardening standards and things. So supporting these kind of efforts that are already being done and making sure that we see like more of these Firewise communities, more of these fire risk reduction communities. I think those are really helpful steps.
And we're going to have a discussion later about a strategy we're working on. And this is helpful because I think when we look at what effort we can do as jurisdictions here in the East Bay. One of the goals are getting people to do things which will keep them from having their insurance canceled. So that's relevant to our item that Susan and John will be talking about later. All right, Vice Chair, any questions?
Thank you. All of them have been answered. Except just one on the timeline. So you mentioned 3 insurance companies have already started the process,
Yeah.
of basically submitting their models so that they can increase
Mhm.
rates. Are there the other big ones that are likely going to come forward to, like, Farmers and
Yeah.
Allstate?
I think in time right now, State Farm is also going through another separate kind of issue with our department with the rates. I'm sure you've heard about it on in the news and things. So there's kind of from what I've understood, an issue with getting that figured out within the courts. There is another kind of market inquiry that's being done by them because of the Palisades and Eaton fires. There's a lot of things kind of on the State Farm end. I think we'll see it in time. But right now from State Farm, no. Farmers, I haven't heard anything about yet. So it's a good question, but from those two, I haven't seen as much.
Got
yeah.
it. And for those that have already submitted, what's the timeline? So how long between when they submit it and can they
It
increase?
really depends. Some of these rate reviews are really, really complicated. It's a new regulatory process entirely. Some of these rate reviews, from what I've heard, these ones specifically under the sustainable insurance strategy should be expedited. But it really ranges. I've seen some of these take 6 months. I've seen some of them take a year and a half. So I couldn't give that. I'm not in the rate review branch, so I couldn't tell you exactly where these are all at in the process. But I do know that they're working kind of tirelessly on those specifically because we want to make sure that we're getting that sustainable insurance strategy to full implementation as soon as possible.
Got it. And I know you kind of touched on this already, but the community, well, all of the things that residents can take that cost money to harden their homes, as well as community-based Firewise, setting up Firewise neighborhoods and all of that. We know that's not a direct correlation to void cancellation, but is it something in these new forward-looking models that's going to be considered when it comes to rate increases or discounts?
For the discounts, it's really about the Safer from Wildfires regulations that's already been passed. That's something that they already have to do. So the home hardening steps that I had listed above, those are things that insurance companies already have to legally give discounts for. Again, it depends on the insurance company, how big those discounts can be. I've seen some range from 2 to 15%, depending on the action, right? But again, the mitigation and things that are being done are taking into account with these forward-looking models in a way they haven't been able to previously. With the former regulations, they only were able to look at past 20 years of data, which again is some of the most catastrophic, expensive wildfires. So if they're setting rates solely based off of that data, it wasn't able to kind of take into account, like I said, the risk reduction that's already being taken, as well as the changing climate that we're going under, where there's more risk involved and more severity and increased number of these kind of wildfire catastrophes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and thanks for coming back to El Cerrito. I have just an understanding question. What are surplus lines and non-admitted insurers?
Yeah, so surplus line non-admitted insurers are insurers that are not admitted and are reviewed by the Department of Insurance in the same way as your State Farm, your Travelers, your CSAA. Those are all admitted insurers. Not admitted insurers, we don't, as a Department of Insurance, have the same, jurisdiction over. So they can raise rates a lot higher. They tend to do that because they don't have to go through our rate review process. So sometimes they're based out of state, sometimes they're based internationally. So they're willing to take on risk in high risk areas that maybe an insurer that's licensed in California won't. The big kind of note for non-admitted surplus lines is that they are not backed by CIGA, which is the California Insurance Guarantee Association. So any admitted insurer, so any of the State Farm, Travelers, whoever, they pay into CIGA, meaning if anything were to happen to their company and they're unable to pay out claims, this kind of California-backed association is able to make sure that, you know, a policyholder is made whole in that event. Unadmitted insurers do not pay into that. So you don't have that kind of insurance, for lack of a better word, insurance that your policy is going to be paid out. It's not to say that these are, you know, businesses that can't be, you know, you don't want to have insurance from them at all, but it is important to note the risk that you're not backed by that California Insurance Guarantee Association. But again, you got to weigh the options of having a full comprehensive policy that's being, you know, written by an unadmitted insurer versus maybe an admitted insurer that's not going to write you a policy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maureen.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions. Number one, has the Department of Insurance done any mapping as far as what residents rely on the FAIR Plan?
Yeah, there's all those numbers available on our website. I believe the ones for 2024 are not up yet, but you can look at the percentage of FAIR Plan based off of zip code.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then as far as the 30 days to ask for a review.
Mhm.
So that's if a 75-day notice was given for non-renewal, then they can request within that first 30 days to ask for another review.
No, so the 30-day for review is after a mitigation action has been taken on your home, you can ask for a review within 30 days of that action. Let's say you get a new roof, a Class A fire rated roof that you didn't have before. You can ask your insurance company within 30 days of getting that installed. Hey, I have this. What is the impact on my wildfire risk score? Is that affecting my insurance at all? So that's the 30-day process. 75 days is simply a notice that timeframe that insurance companies need to give you to find other insurance if they're non-renewing you. So it gives, you know, homeowners time to look for other options in between. Sometimes, you know, in the past, they used to give hardly any notice and, you know, consumers were having to scramble for insurance. So that 75 days gives them time to be able to look for other options.
Okay. And then is there a way that residents can find out what their score is?
Yeah.
Outside of waiting for cancellation?
Yeah. So the 4 times they can ask for a score is when they're applying for a new policy, when they're renewing a policy, when they've been non-renewed, or after a mitigation act. So those are really the only 4 times they're able to ask. So basically around that time you're about to get that 1-year renewal, that would be when you ask for it. Any other time isn't spelled out within this law. So
Thank you.
of course.
So you've been so helpful. Can we get your number?
Absolutely.
Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
yeah,
So if
yeah,
we need to
absolutely.
sort of have a contact at the Department of Insurance.
Yeah,
You want to tell us
absolutely.
your number?
I can give it to you after
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
just send it. Well,
Absolutely.
so we all have
Mhm.
it. That would be helpful. I know there's a general number for the public,
Yeah.
but it'd be great to have your number
Yeah.
for contact.
I'll make sure to.
Yeah,
you
no,
guys
this has been great. So let me turn now to public comment. So public comment on this. We'll start with people in the room.
Henry De Niro, Berkeley Fire Safe Council. 3 related questions regarding modeling. 1, are the 3 approved models public information? Can we find out what the models are? 2, if one were to present to the Insurance Commission a vastly superior catastrophic model, would the commission take it, review it, and include it as one of the approved models? And 3, do the insurance companies have the ability to choose which catastrophic model they use to rate the risk of individual homes and communities?
Yes, great question. So the insurance companies do choose which models they want to use. The model that you're saying that you have like a superior model that you be wanting to introduce to the commissioner, those need to be submitted by an insurer. So it wouldn't be a just, you know, public kind of individual being able to present that. It would be an insurer saying that they want to be able to do that. I think there is a possibility for the wildfire modelers themselves to be able to get into this database of like approved kind of catastrophe modelers, but I'm not exactly sure if that would be automatically picked up by an insurance company, because again, they're the ones that get to choose them. And then your first question, I'm forgetting.
Which are the 3 models?
Yeah, it was Verisk, Moody's, and I'm forgetting the last one, but Yeah, you can look online on our website and see exactly which models have been approved, what exact data is underlying them. No, that is proprietary information, but you can see the models themselves and what the name of them that have been already approved.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Yes.
Very briefly, Elizabeth Stage, Oakland Fire Safe Council. Sharon is the most valuable resource you could have for community gathering. The North Hills Community Association had a meeting with Sharon and Joel Lauscher, the colleague of Amy Bach, from whom you heard a few months ago. And A, it brought out more community members than we've ever seen. And B, they kept asking questions with this much expertise and help as they could until the last person had left. So she's fabulous. We already know about United Policyholders, and those are really fabulous resources. So thank you, Sharon, for demonstrating what we know.
Thank you. And thank you for your contribution to the Wildfire Coalition.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you to Elizabeth for your, I also meant to her financial contribution. Thank you for your contribution, and thank you, Elizabeth. We're not done though. We're maybe more. This has been a great presentation, but thank you for the financial contribution. Just to thank Elizabeth. Other comments and questions? So just generally, your website has a lot of good information, and so that's often what we'll refer to. And I think getting back to this common list of things that people can do, because that's, I think, a question, right? What can they do? And we'll look at where you mentioned on the website, and maybe if we need follow up on as we look at developing strategy, where there may be input from the insurance commissioner's office.
Absolutely. We have a handout that is like a kind of a list of all of the relevant information when it comes to residential insurance and wildfires that I'll make sure to send out. Our website is not, I will say, the most user-friendly, so I will make sure you get that so you have all of the information you need, including all the handouts I had today.
Great.
Thank you.
John, you were going to say something, or? Yes.
Yeah, John Kaufman, Claremont Canyon Conservancy. You mentioned an 85% figure. Can you explain what that is and how that works? And if a homeowner has trouble getting insurance, how do they get included in that percentage?
So it's not going to be anything that a homeowner is going to be able to check themselves, because it's 85% of their market share. So that's not something that's going to be publicly available. I will say the commitments also vary depending on the insurer. So there's some commitments that are 85% in the high wildfire areas. So meaning whatever their market share is, 85% of the homes they write need to be in these high risk communities. That's kind of one commitment. Another one is within time. I believe it's like 5 years or 5% increase in high wildfire areas every year. Or there's other commitments they can make. So it depends on the insurer. And like I said, none of these rate filings with these insurers have been approved just yet. So each insurer is going to have to say, hey, how is this model going to affect rates? What exactly is the commitment going to be, and how they plan on achieving that within a certain amount of time. So the 85% was kind of a general guideline for most insurers, like if they wanted to use these. But again, there is a clause that allows them to write in kind of in stagnant or in, set amounts over time, as opposed to immediately 85% of wildfire, 85% of their share in these wildfire distress areas.
Great. Thanks again. Great presentation, good information, and we'll follow up. Thanks. All right. Item 5 is legislative update, and we have a report by former council member Susan Wengraf on state bills related to wildfire. And I know we had a presentation, of course, last month by our state senator, which was great. And along with Susan and Jonathan. So we now have a handout that we're getting at this moment. But make sure the mic's on. Check.
There we go.
There we go.
So this is a great segue, actually, from the presentation that we just had. Because it just sort of became clear to me that if people don't implement Zone Zero, they're probably not gonna get insurance. And the insurance companies here have a huge power in helping us get everybody on board and into compliance. So as you remember, Vice Chair Ramachandran and I went up to Sacramento a couple of weeks ago, and it was very close to the end of the session. And we went and introduced ourselves, introduced the coalition to legislators, and we also wrote letters of support for the legislation that they were carrying. There were about 90 bills relevant to wildfire, many of them related to insurance following the Southern California fires. And I picked 5 bills to focus on because I think they're the most relevant to the work that we're doing. AB 1 was signed into law, and that requires the Department of Insurance to periodically review its wildfire mitigation requirements, safer from wildfire, as well as its resulting discount schedule. So this is a way of making sure that there's oversight of what's going on in the insurance industry. AB 88 was the one that Vice Chair Ramachandran and I were most excited about because it establishes the California Safe Homes Grant Program within the California Department of Insurance. And it creates an account, the Sustainable Insurance Account, which will fund mitigation efforts. The most important, they've prioritized, I hate that word, but they've prioritized the things that they want implemented. The first is replacement of roofs to Class A roofs. And second is creation of a 5-foot non-combustible ember-resistant zone around structures. And the third is community-wide mitigation projects that reduce the risk of insured wildfire loss. So this is actually money to help people implement home hardening and Zone Zero. It's the only program that I've identified that actually has dollars associated with it. The problem is we don't know exactly how many dollars, and it's up to the state legislators to decide. There is something in here that says community-wide mitigation projects. So there is, maybe an opportunity for us to be able to get a hold of some of this money to do community mitigation-wide projects. So, but there are also income requirements, and you have to be in a zip code overlapping a very high severity zone, and you have to be low income for your county. So I'm familiar with the affordable housing formula, which each county comes up with. And I think, it's something about like $150,000 for a family of 4 to be able to be eligible. We don't know yet how much money is involved. SB 514 creates a program that authorizes local jurisdictions and fire safe councils to train local assessors for dispensable space and home hardening assessments. This is a great program, and I think it's already being implemented in El Cerrito and in Kensington. So now it's law. Everybody can do this throughout the state. SB 429 funds the creation of an open source model for the evaluation of wildfire risk in California, allowing insurance customers to understand their risk structures. And we just heard about that. Now, the next one, AB 1455, caught me off guard. This was not on my radar at all, and it was not on the radar of anybody who I spoke to. What I've heard is that at the last minute, people from Southern California decided to amend it, and so the result is that it requires the State Board of Forestry and Fire Protection to adopt regulations implementing ember-resistant zones and other defensible space requirements for structures located in the SRA, which is the state responsibility area. And it affirms that local designations can also enforce this in LRAs, which is local responsibility areas. Specifically, within 5 feet of a structure, materials that could be ignited by embers must be eliminated. The board is authorized to adopt the regulations as emergency regulations and as a public safety, as an immediate public safety need. And the bill authorizes local fire protection agencies to adopt ordinances that establish defensible space requirements based on the board's regulations. But, and here's the big but, allows local variation and alternative practices so long as they provide substantially similar practical effects to the board standards. If a property owner complies with the local alternative practices, they are not deemed in violation of the board's regulations. So what AB 1455 is doing is giving local jurisdictions flexibility in how they implement the zone zero standards that the Board of Forestry decides on, which is going to happen tomorrow. I'm not sure how they're going to determine how these standards have similar practical effects, and maybe some of the fire people here can explain that. Anyway, that leads me to what's happening tomorrow. Tomorrow, the Board of Forestry is meeting on their zone zero regulations. And on Monday night, they published a menu of options to be decided upon. And there are 4 options. I'll read them to you, try to follow. I can send this to anybody who's that interested. So option 1 is that no flammable landscaping materials are permitted, including grass, shrubs, or mulches. The exception is potted plants under 18 inches tall, which would be allowed if kept away from walls, windows, and vents. That's option 1. Option 2, some plants in pots and low maintained vegetation is allowed. Same as option 1, but also allows low plants under 4 inches tall, like moss or lawns, if kept away from walls, vents, and windows. Option 3, some plants in pots or planted allowed. And then option 4 is basically allows plants in pots and other vegetation in zone zero, but prohibits dead or dying plants, needles, leaves, weeds, and compostable mulches. So option 4 basically is do nothing, because our fire code already says you can't have dead plants, right? So I believe we as a coalition want option 1, which is the strictest. That's what we're talking about. This flexibility, I think, is going to be a mess, frankly. We don't know where they're going, but clearly the people from Southern California who were, the LA City Council wrote a very strong letter in opposition to implementing strict zone zero standards. So they were effective. Then there are tree options. Option 1 is well-maintained trees allowed, local tree protections included. So, but the branches must be at least 5 feet away from walls and above roofs and 10 feet away from chimneys. We have a tree protection ordinance in Berkeley for coastal live oaks. I don't know whether other jurisdictions have tree protections, but they're saying heritage trees are protected. Option 2, well-maintained trees are allowed, branches must be 10 feet from chimneys. So we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Since
Um,
you raised this, and we were just speaking on the letter that we're sending, we agreed we should use the words the strictest in the letter.
Yes.
So there
So-
may have been some email back, we responded, but you'll check. There's a letter that we were intending to want to send out just so that says supporting the strictest.
Yes, so I drafted a letter on behalf of the coalition. And I'll read to you from the most relevant paragraph. We write today in strong support of the strictest standards and regulations for an ember-resistant 5-foot zone around structures in high fire risk areas throughout California. Consistent regulations supported by the most recent science are critical to the safety of properties located in wildland-urban interface. We are convinced by the research that eliminating all combustible materials within the first 5 feet of a structure is the single most effective action that property owners can take to prevent structure-to-structure fires. Combined with basic home hardening, a non-combustible ember-resistant area surrounding structures can create the critical foundation for decreasing property loss in the event of a catastrophic complication. So with your approval, we will send this letter today to the Board of Forestry subcommittee for their
And
consideration.
you have an email from me on a couple of minor other
Okay.
things.
So basically, that's my report, and I welcome questions.
And just to note, we're providing direction that, right, as a body, that that this is consistent with our sort of platform, and we approve sending the letter. Okay.
A comment?
Yes.
If you could share the letter, we can urge our cities to send a similar letter in support. If other council members do the other way, we should do it this way. So
So
What
this
we're
is-
doing, this is on behalf of all of us with this listing all of our agents. In other words, it's on behalf of the East Bay Wildfire Coalition, signed by the chair and vice chair on behalf of the East Bay Wildfire Coalition. And then it lists the cities on the,
oh,
it
so there
doesn't
is no
mean,
need.
if you want, you could. Don't want to discourage it, but it will list all of our agencies on it.
Okay, thank you.
It wasn't just on behalf of one agency, right? And when are they making their decision?
They're meeting tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock in McClellan, which is outside of Sacramento. If anybody's interested in driving up, there are people in the audience who will be going. It's really important to have a physical presence there. It's not guaranteed that they'll take comment on Zoom.
Got it. Okay.
So
Other comments or questions on this? Yes.
Yeah,
Vice Chair.
thank you so much for the write-up, the follow-up on this. I'm very concerned about AB 1455, which when we went to Sacramento was not on our radar because it didn't seem to have this problematic language. It seems like the farther away we get from the LA wildfires, the more dilute some of these protections some of our lawmakers are willing to make. And for context, I feel like we had some very productive conversations with legislators from all over, the East Bay, the Southern California, et cetera. But I figured that there's pressure from local jurisdictions who don't want this strictness. My concern is that not everyone can be like Berkeley, and I very much applaud Berkeley for putting these restrictions forward, but the state regulations provide cover for local jurisdictions who can't do the unpopular thing. And so I think having guidelines that are as strict as possible is important, and hopefully this local alternative practices is interpreted as conservatively as possible so that we can stick with what the state tells us to do. But thank you for the write-up, and I do look forward to hearing more about a number of these, specifically the one that we were most interested in, which was AB 888. At the time when we learned about it, it was $3 million that was being originally put in, but it has to be more than that to be a sustainable program. Not sure if it's going to be a pilot, but As we learn more information, I think that's one that would be great to message to our residents in our jurisdictions that insurance companies want you to harden your homes. We know it's expensive. Here's actual grant money, either to individual homes, Firewise communities, or otherwise. I think I'm looking on a positive note. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of that one.
Thank you. Other comments? Is there any public comment on this? Oh, yes, sorry.
Thank you so much for this report and for the advocacy this year in Sacramento. I am just wondering whether you have thoughts about the next legislative cycle. Well, first, whether there's any bills that turned into 2-year bills that we should be tracking, and whether there's any thoughts about the next legislative cycle and how to approach that.
Vice Chair and I have discussed that, and we actually raised that with Senator Arreguín and also with Assemblywoman Buffy Wicks. We have some ideas. We talked about a public information campaign and how this is an unfounded mandate. And so we have ideas, and we're going to be following up with them to see if we can actually come up with some kind of legislation that they would introduce. And if anybody has any ideas, and we would absolutely be welcome to your input on that.
Thanks. Yeah.
Just one quick question. Based on your observations of the State Board of Forestry meetings, have they talked about enforcement mechanisms? Or has the State Board of Forestry talked about enforcement of these regulations?
No. Not to my knowledge. And also, I mean, there seems to be a disconnect with the insurance industry. I know that Commissioner Lara wrote a very strong letter to them, also endorsing very strict regulations. But, you know, if they could just all be in the same room at the same time and figure out, okay, the insurance companies are going to require this, therefore we should be in sync with them.
All right, public comment. Just come on up to the mic, identify yourself. Again.
Again, Henry Nandero, Berkeley Fire Safety Council. So it's my understanding that tomorrow's meeting is the commission that recommends to the Board of Forestry. It's the last public hearing where they're going to take input, and then the final decision by the Board of Forestry or the Forestry Department will come later. On AB 155, on tomorrow's meeting, Michelle Tuati, who's turned into the sort of, I call him the Energizer bunny of Firewise communities in Berkeley, did a terrific job of analyzing the thing that just came out from the commission. I just forwarded it to Susan and John Goya. I didn't have all the email addresses, so if you could circulate it, there's a link to a 3-page analysis where he goes through option 1, 2, and 3, and he takes a position for the Berkeley Firewise communities. He's not really speaking for them. It's his opinion on, you know, option 1 is the only acceptable option. We could do some of option 2, but it would have to be clarified. So it goes through in great detail. I would encourage everybody to read that who's going to participate in tomorrow's meeting and use some of his comments to make public comment if available. And then finally, my understanding is that this AB 155 is signed by the governor, so it's law. Yeah, it's done. So local jurisdictions will have the authority to modify the Zone 0 standard, make it looser than the Board of Forestry comes out with. Whatever comes out by the Board of Forestry by the end of the year, cities can basically ignore it if they choose to. So it seems to me that's unfortunate, and it certainly puts more political pressure on cities that require a more strict code. I think what this suggests to me is we're heading toward an era where the individual cities and the coalition of the East Bay are going to have to agree on the Zone 0 standard, the vegetation standard for Zone 0 and Zone 1 and Zone 2. Hopefully it will be the same in all jurisdictions, but hopefully it will be the strictest version or very close to the strictest version, and then all the cities will have to enforce it through their fire departments without the state providing cover because the governor has just let every city off the hook, unfortunately. Anyway.
Elizabeth Stage, Oakland Fire Safe Council, just want to build on what Henry said. To Councilmember Ramachandran's question about enforcement. They have talked about sufficient specificity to be enforceable. So they've tried to remove things like well-maintained or well-watered or things like that that are judgment calls. So part of the flaws of these last-minute additions are that they're judgment calls, and the inspectors of any sort don't like to be in that position. So that's one of the things that I'm going to say on behalf of not only the Oakland Fire Safe Council, but on behalf of the East Bay Fire Safe Alliance, which met yesterday and endorsed the strict position that I think, have consensus about, and urged me and Marion Sarney from the West Contra Costa County Fire Safe Council, who are going up there to speak on behalf of the Alliance. So with your endorsement and our endorsement, we've got both the elected representatives and the community representatives walking in the same direction as our fire agencies and fire scientists. Final point, just a small one. We are of the strong belief that tomorrow is the last time for public input, so it's great that you're matching your letters. We believe that final recommendation has to be adopted by the Board of Forestry 45 days before it goes into effect. In other words, mid-November for December 31st deadline.
Mhm.
So if anyone wants to talk after the meeting, I'd be happy to figure out how we who are going to the meeting tomorrow can connect up and perhaps sit together and strategize for our public comment. So thank you so much for your support of the position that we share.
Thank you. Yes. We have our fire chief.
Good morning, Chris Bachman, Assistant Chief and Fire Marshal with Contra Costa County. A lot of the chief officers that are part of Cal Chiefs received an email this morning with information. I did just forward it to Robert. So it's the attachment of that language that was referenced as a PDF. I also copied the section which identifies the dates of each of the meetings and information so everybody has them. Robert can share that with the group. I would recommend that, I know you identified that your letter's going to support the strictest language. I think you should identify that that's option 1 for both vegetation and option 1 for the tree. Because I think what they're going to do tomorrow is they're going to be taking public comment and saying, well, which option do you, they're essentially saying, these are the 6 options we're looking at. There's 4 options for vegetation, 2 options for trees. And based on public comment, probably make the proposal, because in meeting 2 is the presentation for the final proposed regulation, which is they haven't given the start time, but they have given the date and where that meeting is going to be held on November 3rd.
Got it. Has the Chiefs Association also advocated on this as well?
Yes, and that's why they
Right.
sent out the email this morning
Right.
saying we're putting a call to action for all fire chiefs to do a similar thing. Write a proposed letter, identify which option you're going to support, and then have people present at that meeting tomorrow and November 3rd.
Great, thanks. So Susan, appreciate the suggestion on the letter, Susan and Robert, who have the letter where we say the strictest to say meaning option 1 for each of those, right? And then you can send that back. Great, thanks for that, Chief.
And I just want to clarify, those bills that I mentioned to you, they've all been enacted. The governor signed them all.
All right.
If I may,
Yes.
Chair Joya, we do have one comment on Zoom.
Okay.
Jim Hansen. Jim Hansen, you should be allowed to talk.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Jim Hanson, California Native Plant Society Bay Chapter. I just wanted to, I know there's, right now the attention needs to be on the home hardening and the zones because of the guidelines under discussion. But I do want to highlight a bit of good news as part of the legislative session. The legislature and the governor signed a bill SB 653. And what that does is it sets out some kind of long-awaited and very useful guidelines for environmentally sensitive vegetation management. And this, of course, is consistent with the other half of what we all are working on, which is the vegetation management in our wildlands. So just wanted to note that and bookmark it for a later discussion. Thank you.
All right. No other public comment. Item 6 is direction on public communication strategies for the East Bay Wildfire Coalition of Governments, a report by John Kaufman and Susan Wengraf. And this follows up on our discussion at our last meeting where we talked about allocating some funding to work on this. And so this is some preliminary thoughts for us to provide some direction. And John, go. Thank you.
Yes, just to follow up on what John just said, at our last meeting, you did authorize up to $50,000 to put together a plan for a public communications program that we would do in coordination with the 2 county wildfire coordinators, Michelle Reinhardt here in Contra Costa and Chris Pinto in Alameda. So I just wanted to give you an update on what we're doing to move forward with that authorization that you gave us. We're just beginning, but we are in the process of reaching out to advertising agencies or communications firms to find ones that are both interested in what we're doing and have the right experience and background to do it successfully. We are moving forward with that. We are also putting together in writing a list of things that we would want them to address, so that we can choose the firm that's going to give us the best bang for the buck. And we're now just writing that. We're putting that together. Thirdly, we are looking for, in addition to an advertising or communications firm, we're looking for a person or an organization that will be able to help us get the funding for that. In other words, a company or a person or an agency that has experience in getting grants, not only grants from CAL FIRE or other government agencies, but also from people in the private sector. And so we're looking for that. So if you have ideas about agencies or individuals who could do that work, that would be very important. Finally, I just want to conclude with a little bit of why this is so important. We've just been talking about legislation and about what insurance companies may be requiring. But in addition to what may be coming down the road in the way of requirements, either governmental or business requirements, our goal is to make sure homeowners understand that maybe the most important asset that they own is their home, and repairing their home to prevent as much as possible wildfires is in their interest. We want to build public support for this effort. It's not just a matter of meeting requirements or not. It's a matter of what's in your interest to do and what are the things you can do, and demonstrate how those things that you can do will protect your interests going down the road. So that's what we're all about. And I think that's what we all ought to focus on. So whether or not your home is in the highest possible wildfire risk, it's in your interest to make sure it's protected. So that's our goal.
And we should follow up, and maybe we talked about having the chair and vice chair have it like a informal group with you to chat about this with the county coordinators. So we'll work to set that up.
Okay.
Okay. Comments on this? Yes, Sohaila, council member.
Thank you. Thank you for the update, John. My question is, would it be possible to consider having an amber stamp for the counties of Alameda and Contra Costa together, similar to what Marin County is doing? It has been so successful that people from our counties are going there now. So I wonder if Susan and John have considered it. I have no idea how much the cost is, but it'd be an excellent marketing tool to get people's attention into wildfire safety.
And we can have some discussion about all this when we get our group together. Should we do that? Okay. Comments, other comments? Public comment. All right, yes, okay, why not? Keep the run going.
Yes. So just, I think this is a great effort on the issue of getting people to understand and agree. The insurance industry may force even beyond what the fire code will enforce. But if not, we're relying on homeowners to kind of do it themselves. What we're saying in the Firewise groups in Berkeley is don't wait to be told what you have to do, just go do it. Remove the vegetation from 5 feet from your house and get your vents and gutters screened. And if you're one of the 107 people left with shake roofs in the city of Berkeley, find a way to replace it. Rather, I mean, those are kind of the key things that have to get done. So I think the message to the community and the Firewise groups are really a great way to do this at the community level is just go do it. Even if you're not in the very high or high severity zone, because an ember storm coming out of the park will go way beyond the very high and high severity zone. So everybody should be working on this stuff, down into the flats in Berkeley to protect their homes and neighborhoods.
Any other public comment? Yes.
Here, no, thank you for continuing the effort. I know we've spoken about the value of this many times in past meetings, but just as an anecdote, the video I think I shared remotely last time with that CAL fire published on one structure burning, one structure not. After I presented at the mayor's conference and then shared it to some other folks just in the community, it's things like that that anecdotally makes a difference. People who don't know or frankly care about Zone Zero or really expensive wildfire prevention efforts look at that and say, oh, this is a very clear difference. And this is the video where basically firefighters put fires on 2 structures, one that had vegetation around it, wooden fence, a typical looking structure, and right next to it, metal fence, no 5 feet of vegetation, one burnt pretty immediately, one was virtually intact. And it's not just an oversimplification diagram, it's an actual video where you see this happening live. And I think there's ways that we can bring that type of impact into the East Bay specific context, which, is an urban wildfire environment. And I think that it's going to be powerful, and I'm glad this is moving forward.
All right, any other comments? If not, we'll move on to item 7, future meetings and agenda items. So other thoughts that members here have on potential other agenda items? Yes, Samila.
I would like to suggest having a presentation by John Wentworth about California Joint Strategy for
John, who?
Wentworth. I will provide the contact info, Robert. California Joint Strategy for Sustainable Outdoor Recreation and Wildfire Resilience. It has already been adopted by Nevada County and Madera County, Inyo County, Mono County, Eastern Sierra Council of Governments, and the town of Mammoth Lakes. We already had I received a presentation at the different occasion. The only thing I remember is like having fire breaks on the trails, East Bay Regional Parks, East Bay Mud, and there is a lot more into it. It's a new thing, and I hope that this presentation will urge the counties of Contra Costa and Alameda to adopt it too. I think it's very good considering we have East Bay Regional Parks and East Bay Mud in our areas.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I raised this last time and,
I don't think your mic's on, just in case.
oh.
Oh.
Hello?
Yes, there it is.
I had, suggested last time perhaps looking at leave early, public education and, evacuation routes. And I know I'm particularly interested in schools. I was just looking at an EdSource map of schools in the very high fire severity zone. We've got Oakland, Skyline High School, and then there's a number of elementary schools in Contra Costa. That one might be tricky because have ideas about how we could potentially have that discussion given the number of school district jurisdictions across our two counties.
And so when you're saying leave early public education, specifically with respect to schools or residents in general, or both?
That would be in regards to residents
Got it.
primarily, and then in terms of evacuation routes, both residents and school.
Got it. Okay.
And I see Assistant Fire Chief Arnold here. I don't know, Assistant Fire Chief, if you have any thoughts about how we could potentially have a discussion about leave early. It just seems like there's so many tools in our toolbox, including, you know, all the home hardening, but what else can we do to make sure people are prepared?
Thanks for the question. I am not the source of authority on leave early, although I'm getting pretty good at talking about it. If you want to set that as an agenda item, I'd love to have our OES team come and present the why and the how in terms of what led to that decision and why we think it's effective for consideration, I think, across the jurisdiction, if that's what you're asking.
Okay.
That could be helpful, and maybe I can reach out to Alameda County's OES, and there could be other OES divisions that could contribute to that discussion.
Yeah, if you could propose a date, I could make sure that we have some of our team ready to come present.
Thank you.
May I make a comment about that? So Senator Tim Grayson had a meeting about wildfire safety, and a suggestion came from the city of Orinda to have schools closed on red flag days. Currently, if they close, they will lose the budget for those days. So if the state would allow them to close on red flag days and receive the budget, it'd be awesome. So maybe we can support that and ask our Senator Jesse Oregon to support it as well.
Thanks. Other ideas? Two good ones? Yes, Susan.
I don't know what the requirements are, but it's a question. Are schools required to have evacuation plans? And does this come under the auspices of the county superintendent of education?
All good questions, whether it comes under County Office of Ed, and that may be a follow-up to check with the County Office of Ed.
I don't know what the protocols are. I do know that it's the police departments that are in charge of evacuation, not the fire departments.
Right.
So I would be interested to know whether the county requires all schools to have evacuation plans and what they look like.
Sure, I'd be happy to reach out at least to the Alameda County Office of Education and maybe OUSD to start.
I also would like to recommend that everybody see the movie The Lost Bus, which is available on Apple TV. Matt McConaughey plays the role of a bus driver who ends up having to drive 22 children through the Paradise Fire. So it's an edge of your seat. It's very tense. It's really quite amazing. It really sticks with you, but it's a good thing to see, to remind us all.
Is it a true story?
Hmm?
Based on a true story?
Absolutely. Yeah, based on a true story. It was Michelle Reinhardt who asked me to take a look at it.
Great, thanks. Yeah, Vice Chair.
I'd like to have a discussion at some point about inviting other jurisdictions to join and whether we would like to, and if so, who would we want to reach out to? I had heard some interest from some other Alameda County cities. We previously floated, do we want to invite those on the other side of the tunnel? either as members or advisory members or so something to see how we can,
Mhm.
whether or not we want to expand.
Right. Well, I think, and we had, when we started this discussion and we had invited others, I mean, I just recently had a discussion with the representative of the Kensington Police, the police and fire district are now combined, which is a good thing. They consolidated. That would be that's sort of the hole in the donut, I guess you could say, at least on the Contra Costa side. And I am following up with a director of that elected district to see if Kensington Police Fire. Early on, there had been some discussion with Orinda as well. And I ran into their mayor at an event recently, and she said they were, maybe wishing to have a discussion about that. So at least I'm not aware on the Alameda County side, but on the Contra Costa side, those are two jurisdictions that I think are relevant. Kensington clearly, and then Orinda, which is really straddles the hill here.
Yeah. We've had some other conversations with other cities. I've also had one with Orinda and with Hayward and Albany. To my knowledge, and I'm glad to hear John's report about Orinda, but there's a feeling among some of those cities that they just don't want to take on having to come to another meeting. I think it's kind of their attitude. But we should talk about it, because I think if there are others, particularly on the west side of the hills where we have a common interest, that would be
the El Cerrito Kensington Fire Chief is at our meetings, and because El Cerrito and Kensington have the same fire chief, because Kensington contracts with El Cerrito for fire services. Is council member knows that? Yes. Good. Other comments? Yes.
Chair, if I may, just going back to former Chair Wengraff's questions, I can help with the schools. They are required to have an evacuation plan, but I think one interesting question might be, do you have an evacuation plan for wildfire? Because every school is required to have an evacuation plan to get students out of the building. That's a part of the standard. However, we'll find that most of those evacuation plans stop at the exterior wall of the building. So that might help with the information you're looking for, is to ask that.
Got it.
That's important. I don't have any.
All right. Other comment? Yes.
Can I recommend a future agenda item?
Sure.
So several of us attended the Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council Zoom yesterday, and Michael Goldner was their guest presenter. We all know who Michael is. I've read his report 3 times, but listening to him present what he actually did was really remarkable. And I'd like to send a link to that to Robert so that you can all watch the video. He took every major fire in California and he went to the house level with vegetation data, LiDAR data, driving the street data, Google Map data, and he mapped house by house. Did they have a Class A roof? Did they have wood siding? How close the houses were together? Did they have zone 0? He went to that level of granularity, and then he did machine learning model to redo the fires to match what the model said with what the actual result was, which houses survived and which houses didn't. It's really a remarkable model. And I very, very much encourage you to have him as a guest speaker. I think it's really breathtaking what he's done. Thank you.
He's a San Jose firefighter. I looked right. He retired, or is
No, this is an associate professor at Berkeley.
Oh,
he runs the fire science lab, and he's probably the world's leading expert on urban conflagration and the conversion of wildfire into urban conflagration. So this is a model of how all the houses will burn and which ones will and which ones won't. And it's both house specific and neighborhood specific. So it's extremely valuable information.
What's his full name again?
Michael Goldner, Gollner. And
He's in the engineering department at UC Berkeley.
Got it.
I'd be happy to arrange it. We know him. We've met with him. He is associated with the Berkeley Fire Safe Council, but he's widely. And then one other announcement, we have a new Fire Safe Council in the East Bay, the Kensington Fire Safe Council. So we now have in the Alliance, we now have Oakland, the Claremont Canyon Conservancy, Berkeley, Kensington, El Cerrito, and West Contra Costa Fire Safe Councils. We're now up to 7 organizations. Thank you.
Got it. Yes, and I see Michael Goldner's contact here. We have on UC Berkeley.
Okay, I was looking into evacuation routes for schools for wildfires, and apparently California schools must have safety plans, which include evacuation routes. That's part of the ed code at the state level. And it's validated by districts, but it may not include specifically for wildfires. And so if that is the case, it could be another legislative goal to work with our legislative delegation on making sure that that ed code also includes wildfire evacuation routes. So something for us to look into a bit more. Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks for that. All right, moving on, item 8 is public comment on items not on the agenda. So is any public comment on items not on the agenda?
We've been talking about sending public comments to the hearing tomorrow if we're unable to attend in person, or even if we are able to attend in person. Scary update, but good timing. We have till noon today to send any public comments to their email address that will go to the body for sure. So the deadline is noon today, and the address is public comments, no punctuation, at bof.ca.gov. I'm saying it pretty quickly because some of you may find that information in your email because you have a very capable information communicator over there, unnamed, because we're doing advocacy now. So know that you should write your letters immediately and or get your appropriate counterparts in your communities to do that with the time that Supervisor Joya has freed up for you.
Right.
He knew.
We're almost done here, right? Good,
knew.
good
Thank
comments.
you.
That's right. So I guess Robert and Susan will, the amendments we talked about will make in the letter and it'll go to that by noon, right? We've already seen the letter, just there's a couple changes, right? We'll finish this meeting, give time to do that. Great. Yes.
All right, Gary Prost, I'm with the El Cerrito Fire Safe Council. One comment about schools and evacuation routes is that you also have to talk about a muster point, someplace where parents can go to pick up their kids. Otherwise, they're going to be rushing in to the school while everybody's rushing away to someplace safe. Okay. Today, I want to inform you of one small win for the East Bay Hills. The El Cerrito Fire Safe Council is pleased to announce that we were awarded a grant from the California Fire Foundation, funded by PG&E, to clear vegetation along evacuation routes at the Wildland Urban Interface, specifically along Rifle Range Road, which is one way in, one way out. This was a statewide grant program that awarded us $15,000. And it was the only one that, to my knowledge, that was awarded within Contra Costa and Alameda counties. So we're aware that this is a small win, but we plan to leverage it to the maximum extent possible. And we consider it one small step forward. Thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment on non-agenda items? All right, board member comments. We'll start with Maureen Toms. We'll move down. Any comments from board members?
No comments.
No.
So I just want to let you know that El Cerrito and Albany have received $510,000 from the California State Coastal Conservancy to remove 190 eucalyptus and pines, mostly from the hillside natural area in El Cerrito.
Great. So El Cerrito and Albany, yeah. But the hillside area I'm thinking of is on Mosier. Is there a separate hillside area for Albany?
I'm not sure where in Albany their funds are going to be focused, but for
This
us,
is
it's
for the
in the
hillside area.
quarry. Yeah.
Right, got it. Okay, great news. Anything else? Any comments? No. Yeah.
I just want to appreciate the Oakland Fire Safe Council and the Alameda County Fire Department for supporting the recent Emergency Preparedness Day in San Leandro that was just over the weekend. My staff was able to attend and it was very, very well attended, especially given other activities happening on Saturday. And the presentations to the community was informative, engaging, and really encouraged people to connect with their neighbors. So I'm looking forward to having more of those type of events. I also wanted to thank the Berkeley Fire Safe Council for its annual community potluck. That discussion and the networking really highlighted the importance of fire prevention and preparedness. And I want to thank the community leaders and all of our fire safe councils who are doing incredible work in our neighborhoods with neighbors. You are very great ambassadors in terms of sharing how important all of our collective work is. Thank you.
And I'll just add to that, I think all of our fire safe councils across the East Bay, have been really great leaders in really advocating support for really the best policies, but also really doing the grassroots work. So just want to acknowledge all that. And
Thank
Sohaila,
you.
including yours.
I would like to continue on that grassroots work. I noticed that our website doesn't have the portion about the history. I think it's important to honor the grassroots history of this group. So if it could be added to the website, it's great. I also wanted to suggest, I believe the recordings of the meetings go there, but the contact information would be very good resource for the public and for ourselves too, like the presenter today. And we have different presenters. So if you could add that, it would be like resource hub of information for all the resources the community can reach out to. That'd be awesome.
Great. Thanks. Okay, with that, we are adjourned.
Yeah, California State Coast. Yeah. So we have